Playgirl. You read that?
And they've strung the song out too.
So don't bother me on this. It's really important.
Yes, sir.
You're getting paid. Don't read on the job.
All right. Plan is though for the knockout this item, maybe another one, and then we'll try to get about 12:30, 1 o'clock. We'll get a break and we'll have for lunch. That's my current plan. See how far it flies.
Just give Brian another month.
Let's see, number 23, Commission Regulation 2012, Wildlife Heritage Silver State and Partnership in Wildlife Tags, CR 11-06, Amendment number 1, Heritage Tag Vendors. Commissioner Lent, action. Presentation of the Heritage Committee's vendor recommendations to the Commission for approval of the 2012 Heritage Tags. And I think everybody hopefully got a copy of the Heritage Committee recommendations.
Yes.
Here.
Is this it? This it here?
It's blue and it says Heritage Committee recommendations diagonally across the face.
Okay.
Providing I got the right one.
It's dated 5/11/11.
Let's see.
It has a number 23 on it.
These are undated.
That's, yeah, mine's dated in pen.
Yes.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Heritage Committee met and we reviewed requests. We had a lot of requests for tags, and we had one late one.
Okay.
And we did not accept the late application. It was Wild Sheep Foundation Midwest chapter. It was a few days late, or a few weeks late, so we did not accept that one. And we had 2 mule deer tags available, and we awarded one to the Mule Deer Foundation, one for Nevada Bighorns Reno. We had 2 pronghorn, and we recommended one go Nevada Bighorns Reno and Pershing County Chuckers. And we did not have any of these, very many of these people present at the meeting. Rocky Mountain Elk, we had 2 elk. We recommended the Wild Sheep Foundation California chapter, an elk, and a Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And the Nelson Bighorn, we had 1. And we recommend the Wild Sheep Foundation, who's having their show back here in Reno, and we give you dollar amounts. Marine can give us dollar amounts if you're interested in them. California Bighorn Sheep, we recommend that go to Wild Sheep Foundation, whose show will be back in Reno this year. The Wild Turkey, we had 5 tags. Mule Deer Foundation, National Wild Turkey Federation, Silver Sage Chapter, National Wild Turkey Foundation, Las Vegas Struthers. They wanted 2 tags, so we recommend 2 tags. And then Wild Sheep Foundation California Chapter, 1 tag.
Any questions?
Let's hear a public comment on this item, because this is an action item. And then we will, let's start off with Dixon. Come on up, Mr. Dixon.
For the record, Paul Dixon, Clark County. First off, I'd like to thank the Heritage Committee and a tough job and doing a good job at the vendor stuff here. The one recommendation that Clark County had, and only change that we would recommend, is that based on the meeting attendance of the NBU dinner, which is over 2,000, versus the California Wild Sheep Foundation, the California chapter, which is about 300, we thought that switching the pronghorn antelope and Rocky Mountain elk between those 2 would be wise, because you're probably going to get considerably more money for the Rocky Mountain elk tag at the NBU dinner than you're going to get at the California Wild Sheep dinner. And we thought, trying to maximize things, and it's not that we don't think that both of them aren't deserving, but we think that the Heritage Fund would be benefited greatly by having the elk tag with the Nevada Bighorns Unlimited, and giving the California chapter of the Wild Sheep Foundation, the pronghorn antelope, just switching those two, and that would maximize profitability to the Heritage Fund. Thank you.
Public comment. For the public comment, Mr. Flowers.
Rex Flowers, Washoe County. We were a little bit different in our decisions. I mean, I understand the antelope tag was not, Nevada waterfowlers had not had their banquet yet, so you were at a loss at how much it's worth. That came up at our meeting, but we did vote to support them again. And like Clark County, we felt that the Rocky Mountain elk should go to NBU. NBU does such a fantastic job every year with their banquets and advertising their tags. In the last 5 years, that tag has averaged $50,000 in value, and that's what they brought in last year. And that would be, and of course, we always look at NBU that we want them to have the sheep, but really the Rocky Mountain elk is really a big one for you to reconsider for NBU. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For the public comment, seeing none, we'll close public hearing on this matter and bring it back to the commission. Go ahead. Continue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to read into the record. I attended the Wild Sheep meeting in Reno. It's going to be back in Reno, and on their Saturday night finale, and these were guys present. There was no phone-in people on these bids. I just want to read what they sold in one night, and my calculator, after it got to 2 million, it just wouldn't read anymore. But I just want to read some values, and that's why we thought both sheep. And I talked to one of the directors, and they said, we will do the best job, better than anybody. And I'm going to read what into the record some of the fees they got. They had a 10-day desert bighorn in Texas that went for $80,000. This is all in one night. And they had the Oregon bighorn sheep permit, and it went for $30,000. They had
130?
130. I'm sorry, 130,000. They had the British Columbia special sheep permit, 140,000. It went for. They had the Utah Governor's Desert Bighorn permit, went 72,500. They had the Teos Pueblo Bighorn sheep that the bid started at 90,000 and went for 100,000. They had the Baja California Desert Bighorn that went for 55,000. They had the Idaho Special Bighorn permit that went for 82,500. They had the State of Nevada Desert Bighorn that went for 90,000. They had the Mexico Desert Sheep that went for 88,000. They had the Colorado Rocky Mountain Bighorn Sheep, 105,000. They had the California Desert Bighorn Sheep that went for 97,500, more than Nevada. They had the Alberta Minister Special Bighorn Sheep, 195,000. They had the Tibetan Island Desert Sheep, 100,000. They had the New Mexico Desert or Rocky, 145,000. They had the State of Montana Bighorn Sheep, 290,000. They did this in one night. It's unbelievable, the people they have. They have over 30,000 people at their convention, and they were auctioning tags like water, and it was just beyond my imagination when they were, 290,000 for a bordering state, and even California's went more than ours. And one of the things they said that if we, in all these states, like California and Oregon, they had a audio visual, and it just drove people wild, like in a feeding frenzy, like with piranhas, and they would show this big Rocky Mountain up on a rock, and it was from Montana, and the bid went up 20,000. I mean, when you look at these sheep, I mean, I was ready to bid, if I had the money, I was getting crazy. But and if Nevada, if we can get some good videos, because in Nevada, we got a very successful sheep program, and if you look at last year, we had probably, I think, 15 areas that had 170 point rams, And if we could get some videos, and that's what they requested, of what these other states are doing, I think we can get a lot more for our tag, get the frenzy going. And so that's something I'd recommend that the department does to the successful bidders and to get the bid up. But that's why we recommend, they're going to do a tremendous job for our sheep tags. The committee wanted to look at that. So I just wanted to read that into the record.
All right. Okay, we have Commissioner Capurro, Commissioner Macbeth.
It's not necessarily the attendance that you get at the annual meeting that drives how much those tags are going to go for, because in many cases, especially with your elk and your sheep tags, and that they're being bid over the phone from someplace else, or they have a straw man who's bidding on them for them at that place. So it's the attendance doesn't necessarily portend how much that tag is going to go for. I would, it's impressive to have 20 or 30,000 people there and that, but in some cases, some of the smaller venues have marketed them for just as much money because of the phone-in nature of those tags.
Commissioner Macbeth.
I really have no problem with the majority of it, and as we did discuss in the Clark County Cab, I think the recommendation to move, to flip the antelope and the elk between MBU and this Wild Sheep Foundation California chapter is probably a good recommendation to the commission. But I'm curious, when I look at the data, we don't have this particular group, this Wild Sheep Foundation California chapter, we don't have any data on them from the past. Am I seeing that correct?
Right.
I see Midwest chapter, but I don't see the California chapter. And so I was just curious what the committee kind of hung their hat on with regard to that group as the grounds for keeping that, having the elk tag at the Wild Sheep Foundation California chapter versus MBU.
Mr. Committee Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I talked to the guy that runs that, and they run 300 to 400 every year, and they auction a lot of tags. They get the California desert tag, and they get they probably auction 50 or 60 different tags from all areas, and they have a highly successful convention. And I did talk to him, and he was giving me some numbers on the vendors, and he would welcome this and said that they do a real good job on it, and that's why the committee recommended them.
And just one follow-up. Is it an automatic that these events have phone-in procedures, or do we require it? Is that a requirement that we have, or do we know for sure that they're going to have a phone-in ability for bidders to phone in?
My understanding is that we have no requirements.
We have no, but all of them do, I think. I don't know of anyone that don't.
Everyone I've gone to has.
Commissioner Shrum.
Excuse me, Vice Chairman Lent, when you're reading off all the numbers of that, the Wild Sheep Foundation California chapter, the tags that they had auctioned off, what they have for mule deer? Can you tell me?
Say that again.
Okay.
That wasn't the California chapter.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Was there a mule deer?
All right. Just
All right.
clarify the nature of those numbers for the. You're giving numbers for which group earlier?
What group? What animal?
I was curious as to how much they auctioned a mule deer tag for.
The Mule Deer Foundation auctioned mule deer for $80,000 and the elk for $39,000 last year. And they also auctioned a special mule deer permit on an island, I forget the name of it, in the middle of Salt Lake for like $290,000. It's never been hunted, and the Park Service owns it, and the money went into the Park Service. And I couldn't believe they got that for a deer tag, but we got 80,039 last year. And that's the Mule Deer Foundation.
All right.
Motion?
Charlie?
I'm good.
Okay.
You ready for the motion?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the committee's recommendation for the heritage tag vendors this year.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend that motion.
Oh, we can't because we don't have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the recommendations as presented by the committee.
I would like to move that that the pronghorn antelope tag that you have recommended for NBU be moved to Mule Deer Foundation.
Okay, so the pronghorn antelope. Got it.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second on the floor to amend the main motion to move the pronghorn antelope from NBU to the Mule Deer Foundation.
What do they got now?
And they currently have a wild turkey, a mule deer, and that's about it. So that'd give them mule deer and a
Where do you see
antelope.
that? Where do you see what they
Well,
have?
they have,
Mule Deer Foundation currently has a mule deer
and wild turkey.
and a wild turkey.
And an antelope, that's what the motion is.
Well, and the motion would be to strike it and add that to the mule, yeah, and then they would have an antelope if this amendment to the main motion passes, and then the main motion passed after that.
The antelope at NBU.
As currently written on the recommendations.
Mule Deer Foundation.
Okay, everybody understand the amendment to the motion? That is to give the pronghorn antelope that is listed as recommendation from the committee to NBU and give that to the Mule Deer Foundation. All in favor of that motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Okay, we have motion passes 5-3. Commissioners Wallace, Cavan, and Macbeth opposed. All right, now we have a motion on the floor, which is to approve the committee recommendations with the exception of the pronghorn antelope would now go to the Mule Deer Foundation and the Pershing County Checkers Unlimited. Everybody understand that motion? All in favor of that motion as amended signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
I missed one. Huh? Aye? Aye, okay. So motion passes 6-2. Commissioner Wallace, Commissioner Macbeth opposed. Okay,
Here's my data.
let's move right along to litigation report. Deputy Attorney General Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few updates since I submitted my litigation report, but I'll go through them and then I'll mention the updates. The first one, U.S., the Walker Lake matter, again, not a lot of movement. The
Please
settlement,
keep it down in the audience, we're trying to listen.
the confidential settlements are, again, still being negotiated, and that's all I know. On the Wayne H. matter, I sent an email to our attorney, Mr. Fellers, and I have not gotten a response from him. So the last activity on that was our amicus brief filed on February 14, 2011. Carson Lake and Pasture, we received a decision from the U.S. District Court on Wednesday reversing the state engineer's decision. I intend to meet with NDOW next week to discuss our options. I have not read the decision in detail, but the district court rejected the state engineer's decision to approve our water transfer at 3.51 AFA and said that it should be at the 2.99 AFA. Number 4, Mr. Elms. 3 of the 4 counts were dismissed. I haven't heard anything from opposing counsel on the last count. I consider that matter pretty much taken care of, but I guess until the court finally dismisses the whole case, we'll keep that on the report. Number 5, Christie versus Endo. We filed our answer on May 21, 2010, and I have not received anything from opposing counsel on that matter. Number 6, Hansen versus Endo. We filed a stipulation to dismiss just yesterday. It's just waiting for the court to approve, and that matter should be resolved shortly. That's all the updates I have.
Okay, on number 4, you said, what, do you happen to know what the 1 count is that remains on that?
I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's a count that doesn't apply to the department, is my recollection.
Okay. Questions? Yeah, you want to ask a question about that one?
Yeah, I got a question on number 2, the amicus brief in support of the United States filed, and NDOW was part of that?
That is correct.
Can they do that?
Yes. I mean, what do you mean, can they do what? File an amicus brief? The court, this matter started in 1991, I believe, and we received, we actually filed a motion to intervene in 1991 that was rejected by the court. However, the court granted us amicus status, and we've actually filed 2 briefs, I believe it was in the 90s or the early 2000s. So we have been granted amicus status in this matter since the 90s.
Who actually filed this brief? Who did the paperwork on it?
It was written by Mr. Fellers and the clinic at University of Colorado. I did authorize it. I read it and I approved it on behalf of NDOW.
Who were the other parties to the amicus?
The other parties were the National Wildlife Federation, Nevada Wildlife Federation, and the Natural Resources Defense Council.
All right.
Mr.
Any
Chairman.
further questions? We have Commissioner Schrum and then Commissioner Vogler.
Mr. Chairman, I want to know why or how we come up with one good reason to join into this brief. If we're going to be in this brief at all, we should be on the side of Hage, not on the side of radical groups like the National Resources Defense Council, who has a long, long history of being anti-ranching. For one, they were part of the group that started a lawsuit with, if you remember, back in history with the spotted owl, where they went ahead and just virtually destroyed the lumber industry in the northwest part of our country. They were also involved in the desert tortoise fiasco we have going on in the southern part of the state, which has cost the state of Nevada millions of dollars, and it's an ongoing thing. And they have studied this desert tortoise for 15 years, been into court, out of court, and this is how they get their money. And we still don't know if this endangered tortoise, if the population is growing, receding, or staying the same. And this is what they do, is start these things. And I can see absolutely no reason for Department of Wildlife to be involved in this thing. I think if we're going to be involved, we should be on the other side of the fence. It's an absolute mistake. I think it's a black eye for Department of Wildlife, and it certainly, I don't think, is going to sit well with ranchers.
But the decision's not made by this commission. We can talk about, we can make recommendations, but
We don't make that.
we don't make the decision. Okay. Commissioner Vogler.
was under the understanding that any matters of the state government was handled by the Attorney General's office. How can they delegate that to another outfit without having some sort of a formal hearing or something from the Attorney General?
I don't fully have the background. Again, this decision was made in the 90s. It's certainly communications between the attorney and the client that is privileged, but all I can tell you is that this decision was made in the 90s. It's not a recent decision.
If you're talking about just signing on to the brief, if another party's writing a brief and their interests coincide with yours, then you're free to join in with them and do a joint brief with them. The Attorney General, Ms. Nguyen, still represents the Department of Wildlife and reviewed that brief and found that there was enough in there that coincided with the interests of NDOW to sign on to it. And if it had been, not in keeping with the interests of NDOW, she could have declined. But that's I think that's your question is how could the Attorney General sign on to a brief by somebody else? And it's just because if our interests are aligned, that's an acceptable practice.
Then that leads me to my next question. What is the interest? Water and feed are both vested in wildlife already. Why would you want to block the eye of every rancher in this state, whether you agree with age or not? If they're talking about the allocation of the feed in those permits.
We've got an action item coming up immediately following, which is the Hage lawsuit update and resolution. Action Commission will hear report on Hage lawsuit, may draft letters, resolutions, or policies concerning this item. We better we hash that out there, Mr. Stockton, or we better hashing that out here?
Well,
Depends
what we're talking about.
Okay.
Can I ask one question for clarification? Ms. New said that that they started this kind of process where they joined as an amicus back in the early 90s or late 90s to early 2000. But did they file on as a party along with organizations like the National Resource Defense Council at that time, or did you file it as the Department of Wildlife on your own?
My review of the files, and again, this case spans decades, but I do not recall NDOW ever having filed a brief on its own. We've always been represented by the Natural Resources Defense Clinic on this matter.
Wow.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Howell and Commissioner Shrum?
I have a question for Brian. Is it significant that NDOW was at the top of the list on the people filing?
No.
It's not significant?
There's no significance to that whatsoever.
Okay.
Commissioner Shrum?
Mr. Chairman, this definition of amicus curiae is a friend of the court, is also applied to persons who have no right to appear in the suit but are allowed to introduce evidence to protect their own interest. Now, can anyone tell me just exactly what interest the Department of Wildlife has that would be on the side of the Natural Resources Defense Council, who has a long, long history, as I say, of being against ranchers and everything ranchers stand for? They're also allied with the National Wildlife Federation, and I have a lot of information on them also, and Nevada Wildlife Federation. These groups are all tied together, and they have one common cause, and let me assure you, no matter how they paint their picture, they are not in favor of the ranchers. And I want you folks to know about these people. They are not in favor of the ranchers or what the ranchers stand for.
In the microphone.
I'm sorry. So I want you folks to know that these groups are not in favor of the ranchers or what the ranchers do, and they want to go ahead and drive the ranchers out of business. They'll either do it in the court or however they can. And I don't believe that the Department of Wildlife has any business being allied with them. I think it's a serious mistake. It's a black eye on the Department of Wildlife, and we certainly don't need that.
Okay. Commissioner Macbeth?
Well, I happen to have read all these Hage opinions. There's a number of them. and and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the issue was that the Department of Wildlife had introduced elk into this into the Pine Table Mountain area, and so they were directly involved in other words, the allegations that were in effect made were that that a ranching use was converted into a recreation use, and so that's why the department is I think involved in this litigation.
Commissioner Vogler.
For the record, it's not just the ranchers. They're against mineral exploration. They're against geothermal. They're any kind of resource development. They're a group of lawyers that sue on a drop of a hat at Natural Resource Defense Council.
Let me just interrupt for just 1 second. The issue here is not the background of National Resources Defense Council and Natural Resource Defense Council, NRDC, whatever they are. The issue is, are the interests aligned? And someone at some point made a decision that the interests were aligned enough to allow NRDC to participate in this, or not participate, but to represent NDOW in some capacity, right? Because NDOW still maintains a Deputy Attorney General who signs out, who needs to be involved in the case and watching it. And then we've had somebody, the whole time watching that. So the background of, or how you feel about it, Natural Resources Defense Council is not really relevant to NDOW's representation in this case. So, lots of times you have people that you disagree with on one issue that you agree with on another issue. And so the fact that we agree with them on this issue, their background is relevant to whether we agree with them on this issue. So, and,
I still beg the question, Brian, and all of you. Wildlife is already vested in feed and water in the state, and they are allocated. Every BLM permit that I've ever seen has written in there. And in some herd management areas on horses, there is a allowable use level. There's a management level for even horses. The argument that is going to be held in June in Las Vegas is based on all the other decisions have been made, all the other parts of it. This judge came back and opened up and said, hey, we have to go beyond the ditch rights to private land of the 50-foot right-of-way across government land. There had to be a reason for these adjudications with the Taylor Grazing Act, all of these things that showed that the feed had a value beyond that. And he is asking all parties to show how far an animal, a cow, a sheep, a domestic horse, can travel from water and still feed. Well, you throw in the snow, I do not see the relevancy at all. And I promise you, I'm glad I have long distance to my house or my phone lines would melt. I've had my computer overloaded, and if there was ever any alliances, they're gone. Habitat, we talk about habitat. When you say habitat to a rancher, we've been blamed for 40 years of the lack of habitat. The habitat is in better shape than it's ever been in the last 20, 30 years right now. But we're still talking about habitat, and when you throw that word habitat out there, you set them on fire.
All right, are we done with item 24 and want to move on to 25? Because we're pushing into 25 here, basically.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We want to hit 25 shortly?
Nope, it's 20,
Okay, 24.
One last comment to Mr. Stockton. It's common knowledge, Mr. Stockton, you're known by the company you keep, okay?
That's a political decision. Okay, so let's go on with item number 25, which is the Hage lawsuit update and resolution. Basically, there's not much report to hear other than I think everybody's probably had a chance to read what's gone on with the Hage case and has obviously made themselves very familiar with it. And does the public have any comment on this? I know I've gotten a lot of calls on this issue, and I'll try to reiterate a couple of them, but if there's some public comment, or Cabs, do you guys come up with something on this, or Cabs take an opinion? Nobody. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on this matter. I know I've gotten calls saying, what are you doing? Why did you do this? And I'm like, do what? Commission doesn't have any say in the matter. So basically, this comes to us today. You know, there's probably nothing we could really do in the way of policy on this item. Definitely couldn't, you know, it's several drafts of things. But resolutions, just for clarification, I think I know the answer, but what power of law does a resolution have? What limitations do we have on resolutions? Just so we know where we're at.
As far as a law, it's just a statement of your opinion. It doesn't have any force of law.
So what limitations would we have on making resolutions? I mean, since it's just an opinion.
Good taste, I think.
Good taste.
Okay.
All right, there you go. I had heard a lot of things from a few people. I threw down a few notes. I don't know if anybody else had come up with something. So I made a few copies, handed down. I think there's enough for left and right, and then there's a bunch for the public as well on that. Commissioner Capurro, go ahead.
Yeah, before you get into discussion of that, I think what makes people nervous, and I understand, you know, we don't have the authority to deal with
So I want to talk about this
whether or
a little
not
bit very
that
shortly.
they do this, but what makes us nervous, and others, people have called me also, is that if they were going to file as an amicus, it's one thing to file an amicus along with other state attorney generals, because then it makes sense. It's governments supporting other governments in a particular situation. But I think it is a highly suspect for the state's attorney general to get involved with NGOs who have the history that they do. Because as the statement you made, you're known by the company you keep. And that to lend your name to that activity, even if they agreed with some or all parts of what is in that amicus, it should have been filed separately on behalf of the state of Nevada and not as part of a trio of including some groups that are highly questionable.
There's a few, and one thing I just when I was scratching down these notes on this deal, you know, the few of them are things I wanted to make sure that were clear, and I mean, I'll read the whole thing, but you know, the main points are: this is done without the authorization or knowledge of the Board of Wildlife Commissioners. I don't think the commission likes it, and would really like to see the Department of Wildlife being withdrawn from this, especially considering the company it's keeping. Anyways.
What do you think about the idea of doing a lunch break to let everybody digest this?
Yeah.
I'm to have a lunch break, everybody digest this and come back. It is noon.
Yep. Take lunch.
What do you think?
Yep.
Okay.
Good idea.
Hey, did anybody else have anything, I was assuming somebody else would have something scratched out, or did I have only secretarial work around? Okay. And also on this item, you know, I don't have any particular marriage to any particular portion of this language. If there's a few numbers in there that are wrong or something, be a good time to let me know.
Good idea.
Thanks.
Did you make copies?
I made copies. There should have been about enough for everybody.
And that they have a chance to
There
look
was-
at it, otherwise
She handed one to everybody there.
There you go.
Okay, we're gonna come back. Let's take an hour. We'll call this back to order at 1:15.